On today's show, the ups and downs of an elk hunter in Colorado, especially one who hails from the flatlands of Minnesota. Hey, is that a black cloud over my head? We'll go into the high country to find out. And later, fish art of a different kind. He carves decoys to look like fish to fool fish. Those stories and more, next.
Minnesota Bound. Brought to you by Minnesota's Select GMC dealers.
Hi everybody, Raven and I welcome you to the show. First up is a hunting adventure that turned out to be one of the most memorable of my life. I was hunting elk in Colorado. Little did I know I would end up in the middle of a nature spectacle like I've never seen before.
Okay, we've seen some elk just over the hill here, so what we'll do is we'll go up here real slow, sneak up and see if we can see any wolves in there.
It's late autumn in high country near Craig, Colorado. Snow has come with a promise that even more snow will fall. For elk hunters, this is the season of harvest.
They're in that brush.
My friend John Hauer and I have come to Elkhorn Outfitters at Craig, where the peaks reach for the moon. It's the kind of country made for a mule. Dick Dodds, owner of Elkhorn Outfitters, once a horseman, is now a mule believer himself.
Mules can handle about any kind of riding we have on our ranch, from the 10,000 foot to 6,500. If you need to cover long distances, they're there. If you need to go up and down steep country, they're also there to do the job.
Dodd's goal at Elkhorn is to provide quality hunting. It's another reason why every morning it's horses or mules being saddled.
The main reason we did all our foot or horseback is we wanted to put the integrity of elk hunting back in it. Not that truck hunting is bad. It's just sometimes elk hunting on horse makes you feel a little bit better. It's another thing that's real hard to explain because it's just part of hunting, being on a horse and trying to outwit an elk and following what they do.
A former flatlander from Minnesota, Dodd started Elkhorn Outfitters and began guiding elk hunters 2 decades ago.
Our place is unique because we can hunt in September with the rifle in the rut. So most of our hunting is done up high. The September hunt is a lot more riding and bugling and listening, trying to find, the herds aren't as big as they are at this time of the year, but it's more of a intense type hunt where you'll hear one bugle, you try to figure out which way the wind is going, and then you try to either bring them to you or you go to them. Then we move down one level about in the 7,000 to 9,000 foot range, and we still hunt on horse, but it's mostly a spot and stalk type hunt. They aren't in the large groups that they are now, but there's still, you'll see 50 to 80 elk a day. The elk will start migrating depending on the weather. Generally they'll start moving about the 1st or 2nd week of November and continue until they've moved out west. They'll end up migrating about 50 miles from here.
For the elk themselves, the promise of deep snow in high country triggers one of nature's great migrations. When we return, we'll hop on a mule again and continue our quest for a Colorado elk.
Minnesota Bound. Brought to you by Minnesota's Select GMC dealers. Kinetico. Rapala Ice Force. LL Bean. And by Grand Rapids Tourism.
Time now to return to my elk hunting adventure. As you'll see, elk everywhere, but not always easy to get close to.
When it snows in Colorado's high country, it snows and snows and snows some more. For as long as mountains have been high, for as long as snow has covered them, herds of elk, not by twos or fours, but elk by the hundreds, have instinctively left their high summer range to escape winter.
My personal belief is that there's been a lead cow, you know, someone in that matriarchal group that'll just keep moving, and then their calves follow, and all the bulls follow the cows west. And some of these cows, you know, might be 10 or 11 years old, and they're passing it off to their offspring when they're out west. So I believe it's something that's passed on. Fences, hunters, highways, towns, they have a tough road.
To watch this massive movement is to be humbled. To think it almost disappeared is to be angered. By 1920 in America, elk were almost gone, wiped out by unregulated hunting. But today, elk herds are thriving. Thanks to limited seasons and hunter-financed elk management, elk populations by 1970 grew to 500,000. Today, elk numbers are closer to an estimated 1 million animals.
The best part of the late season really is the wildlife that you see. You know, when you're hunting earlier in the year, you'll see elk here and there in smaller bunches. But this time of year, you know, for somebody who hasn't seen it, it's almost unreal because over the last couple of days, we've seen herds of, 1,000, 1,500 together, and there's been days when we've seen 3,000 or 4,000 elk in a day.
With elk marching like herds of cattle across open country, it's fair to ask, is an elk hunt under these conditions closer to an elk shooting gallery? Dick Dodds has the answer.
The only thing I want us to be known by is that our quality means everything, and our integrity in our hunting is everything also, because that's all you'll have. We can go kill elk like nothing flat. If there isn't some meaning in this hunt, then it's for nothing.
Coming up, elk everywhere. So what does that mean? It means elk hunting ain't easy. That's next.
Closed captioning is brought to you by Starkey Hearing Technologies.
Hi, I'm Rob Jerusalem, Managing Editor of the Outdoor News Publications. There's been a lot of bear news in Minnesota this fall. For starters, Minnesota has a new state record black bear. Jason Wenberg of Stanchfield took his big bear in September 2013, but didn't get a final official score of the animal until recently. Heavier bears have been taken than his 415-pound dressed animal, but the Boone and Crockett Club and other record-keeping organizations use skull measurements to rate bears. Wenberg's Big Bruin had skull measurements that topped the previous Minnesota bear taken in 1997. As for bear hunting overall in Minnesota this fall, the state's 2014 bear kill dropped to about 1,600 animals. That's a second consecutive decline and the lowest harvest in a season since 1988. State officials estimate there are 10,000 to 15,000 bears in the state, and DNR biologists say the population is stable, but not necessarily increasing. The bear population has stood as high as 25,000 animals in the late 1990s and early 2000s, when the harvest was usually in the 3,000 to 4,000 bear range. With a decline in population, however, the DNR's responded by issuing the lowest number of available permits in 30 years. Hunting is the main driver of the state's bear population, so with a decline in permit numbers, the DNR is confident the bear population will rebound. And finally, speaking of big bears, the region has produced some real monsters this fall. An Ontario hunter shot a 760-pound specimen north of Lake Superior on September 13th, and Wisconsin's Waupaca County, in the east central portion of that state, gave up a 780-pounder in late September. For regular updates on how all 2014 hunting seasons unfold, read the print edition of Outdoor News or check us out online at outdoornews.com. I'm Rob Jerusalem.
Time now for the conclusion to my Colorado elk hunt. Thanks to a mule, I got up in the high country with the elk.
As I follow guide Dick Dodds, an elk hunter soon comes to the realization that nothing is ever easy about elk hunting, and that's probably a good thing.
Right over there. We gotta keep the wind in our nose. We better stay on top. If we don't stay on top, then we're gonna lose them in the brush.
But elk have a way of disappearing.
What happened to them cows that were on the side? Where'd they go?
With no answer, you climb back into the saddle and ask your mule to do the impossible. I'm riding Sassy. John is aboard Honeybee, and Dick is on a mule named Ambrose. Another trail, another climb, snow falling like a white sheet. Nothing bothers a mule.
They could be just laying over in that brush. But see, the wind's right here. I think they're down below us someplace. I think he is too. There's that bull now. Look at him coming through the top. Big bull. See, he's all the way to the left, just poking his head out.
We knew the elk were close, but they knew we were close too.
Oh no, here's your bull down here.
Suddenly what began as a slow stalk turned into a frantic snow slide.
Come on, here. Right here, come here. Right down here. The bull's on the top. He's on the top. See him up there? The high one. I guess how far is it? Sit on your butt. How far is it? Hurry. Hey, wait. He's coming up on the bottom. Wait now. Watch him through there. Come through this side. He's on the top. He's gonna be over here. There, he's the fourth one. Looking right at us. Two together. Take him. Take him. Right there. Take him, right there. Take him. Take him.
Even in death, a bull elk keeps its majesty.
And how old do you think this guy is?
I don't know, he's probably 3.5. You know?
Yeah.
Guy's got the big body.
My hunt over, my elation was as high as the mountains as my trusty mule carried me out of this theater of elk. If only for a few days, I was witness to one of nature's magnificent and unforgettable moments. Now I had a moment and a mule to remember. This week, our Minnesota Bound Classic features a fish artist of a different kind. Stay with us.
Minnesota Bound, brought to you by Radco Truck Accessories, Ellsworth Creamery, the Minnesota Horse and Hunt Club, and by AgStar Financial Services.
Time now for our Minnesota Bound Classic. This story is about fish decoys. You know, the device used to attract a northern pike under the ice to spear it. Well, guess what? Those decoys have become a folk art of their own. And here's a story about one of the best.
If unusual art lights up your day, well, you'll want to meet this artist on his way to work.
What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put a pattern. I'm drawing a pattern of a perch onto a piece of paper.
Bob Johnson is a wood carving artist you've probably never heard of. And he carves things you probably never figured could be art. Fish decoys. Bob Johnson carves fish decoys.
When I was a kid growing up, I grew up north of Detroit Lakes on the White Earth Indian Reservation. Spearing has always been a very important part of any tribal person around. My dad was an avid outdoorsman. He taught me how to fish, hunt, and spearing was part of it.
His Brainerd, Minnesota studio is also his laundry room.
What I do is I'll hold this knife, and I just start cutting it. I'm gonna pull this book out again. I just want to take another reference here. And I usually start right with the gill plate.
Long ago in Minnesota winters, spear fishermen dangled decoys through a hole in the ice to attract northern pike. Today, pike spearing is still practiced by a declining number of Minnesotans, but the decoys themselves have turned into a booming sport of their own.
This fish here is going to be presented at a competition next week, and one of the categories is a 9 to 10 inch perch.
A swimming perch is only as good as its paint job, of course.
Cadmium yellow is the first color that I'm going to spray down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the vertical markings in now. This one will be entered in the show next weekend. See if it turns out good enough. A lot can go wrong.
And now, the moment of truth for a fish carver and his perch. It's on to the annual gathering of fish carvers in Perham, Minnesota.
We're registering decoys for the John Jensen Nationals.
Last 30 is 206.
We just hit 200 fish registered. We should hit 600.
Finally, the time comes. Will the carved fishies be judged good enough to keep?
That's a poor swimmer, but a nice fish. Glide's good, average swimmer. A little bigger fish to swim here. There's a nice fish. Beautiful. Effortless swim. That was a very nice job of letting that decoy.
And Bob? Well, he's thinking about the sleep he's missing.
You know what I'm waiting for is I'm waiting for Monday so that I can, or Sunday night actually, so I can go to bed at a decent time.
Bob's perch is waiting too.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's start the banquet. It's showtime.
One by one, the winners are announced. And then?
First place, perch, airbrush, from Brainerd, Minnesota, Bob Johnson.
Turns out, Bob wins 6 firsts out of 7 entries, including the highest honor fish carvers bestow.
Winner take all and $1,500 from Brainerd, Minnesota, Robert Johnson.
So that's Bob Johnson's story of Artist Makes Good. He carves fish decoys, and they've been judged good enough to keep.
I'm shocked. I'm still in shock. I'm still in shock.
Kind of amazing how some of those decoys actually even look like a fish. Well, that about does it for us. Remember, introduce the kid of the great outdoors. I'm Ron Sharon, of course, always the star of the show, who is losing her patience. Raven. Now what do you want?
Transportation provided by Premier Transportation. Call 1-800-899-7433. For more information on these stories and more, catch us on the web at mnbound.com.